Have you ever experienced something spooky that you just can't explain? Ever seen a shadow out of the corner of your eye when you know that you're alone? Has a room ever gone inexplicably cold, seemingly at random, and with no warning? Do you believe in ghosts? Hey kids, welcome home, and welcome to the first of a new series we are going to explore together. We're going to be taking a look into some of the most popular locations of reportedly real haunted locations across the United States. And what better place to start than a location that might be considered the heart of the country, the very capital of the United States of America. You voted, and I listened. Today we're going to take a look at the more haunted side of the history of the White House, and, most importantly, the history of the Lincoln family and all the tragedy and triumphs therein. So, let's sit back and learn a little history and talk about some ghosts. (1600 Pennsylvania Avenue). Quite arguably one of the most well-known and widely recognized addresses in the world. The White House began construction on October 13, 1792, and was designed by James Hoban, an Irish-born architect fashioning it after the Leinster House in Dublin. Construction would take 8 years and was completed on November 1st of 1800. Every single U.S. president, with the exception of George Washington, has lived in the White House while in office. So, is it really any wonder that it is known to be exceedingly haunted? Important decisions about the State of the Union, decisions to go to war or attempt peaceful communication between nations, simple arguments, fires and insurrections. The White House has seen its fair share of events. During the Chesapeake Campaign of the War of 1812, the British Army set the White House and several other prominent government and military buildings ablaze in what has since been referred to as the Burning of Washington. The fire destroyed the interior of the residence and left the exterior significantly charred. To this day, it remains the only time since the American Revolution that a foreign power has captured and occupied the Capitol. Domestic, however, well, we won't talk about that. It was immediately determined that renovations would have to begin, and begin quickly. James Monroe was able to move back into the partially completed, reconstructed executive residence in 1817. During renovations, many additions and alterations were made to the design and layout of the White House, leading to the additions of the South Portico in 1824 and the North Portico in 1829. And, of course, the addition of the Oval Office in 1901. Before we dive into the history of the Lincolns and their time in the White House, I wanted to give you a list of supposed ghosts and apparitions that have been spotted or heard around the White House over the years. Beginning with Anna Sarat. The claim is that Anna is known for banging on the doors of the White House, pleading to see Andrew Johnson, the vice president under Lincoln, who would then later inherit the job of president himself. Anna is heard to be attempting to seek a pardon for her mother, Mary Sarat, who was a conspirator in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And there's David Burns. David is the man who owned the land on which the White House now stands, and is reported to be seen, and on rare occasions heard, in the Yellow Oval Room. We also have the tale of an unnamed British soldier who is said to have perished in the War of 1812, and is now seen roaming the White House grounds, holding a torch. And then there's the infamous tale of Abigail Adams. In her days in residence of the White House, Abigail used to hang her laundry in the East Room to dry, and staff members to this day still report smelling the scent of wet laundry and fresh lavender in this area. Heart breaks little for Abigail Adams, as her afterlife is spent doing laundry. And then there's William Henry Harrison, who is the first president to die in the White House. The claims are that Harrison haunts the attic. And my personal favorite, John Tyler, in what I think is one of the sweetest tales of White House hauntings. John Tyler is reported to haunt the Blue Room, and in his residual-style haunting, he's often seen reliving over and over again his proposal to his second wife, Julia Gardner. and Dolly Madison reportedly hangs around the Rose Garden to protect it, many decades after her death. And Thomas Jefferson likes to hang around in the Yellow Oval Room with Mr. David Burns, and is often heard playing his violin. There are tales of Andrew Jackson, who apparently was quite the laugher and napper in his day, as he is often heard letting out a deep and guttural laugh while lying in the bed in the Rose Room. He is one of several ghosts reported on by Mary Todd Lincoln herself. And of course there's Willie Lincoln. We will talk a little more in depth about Willie later on, but he was reportedly very active during the Grant administration in the 1870s, with several reporting sightings by several people. And of course the most famous and widely discussed ghost of the White House, Abraham Lincoln himself. And of course, he's why we're all here today. It's no secret that the most riveting and heartbreaking and downright chilling tales to come out of the White House tend to revolve around the Lincoln family. And I will do my best in the attempt to bring justice to the stories, life, and afterlife of the Lincoln family. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809. The second child born to Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln, he was born in a log cabin on Sinking Spring Park in Hodgenville, Kentucky. Abe had an older sister named Sarah and a younger brother named Thomas, who died in infancy. Primarily through his childhood, our future 16th President of the United States lived in Kentucky and Indiana, where his father worked as a farmer, cabinet worker, and carpenter. At various times, Thomas owned farms, livestock, and town lots. He's also reported to have sat on juries, appraised estates, and served on county patrols. The hardships of Abraham Lincoln started when he was just 9 years old, and his mother, Nancy, succumbed to milk sickness on October 5th of 1818. This left 11-year-old Sarah in charge of the household and left her responsible for her father, Abraham, and her mother's 19-year-old cousin, Dennis Hanks, who had himself been orphaned. Sarah remained responsible for assisting in the care of the Hanks-Lincoln family until 10 years later on January 20th of 1828, when Sarah herself died along with her stillborn child. Sarah's passing was devastating to Abraham. Although their father Thomas had remarried just a year after losing Nancy, and although he was close to his stepmother Sarah Bush Johnston, even calling her mother, he was also very close to his older sister and always looked to her with love and respect as the matriarch of the family. Throughout his childhood, he was often referred to as lazy, as he wanted nothing to do with the farm chores and preferred to sit down and read a good book. Abe and I would have got along pretty well. Lincoln was primarily self-educated and persisted in his life as an avid reader and retained a lifelong interest in continuing to learn. In 1839, Abraham met Mary Todd, daughter of Robert Smith Todd, a wealthy lawyer and businessman. It was Mary Todd who would become the 16th First Lady of the United States and, more importantly, his wife. The two met in Springfield, Ohio, and were engaged just 1 year later. Their original wedding date was set for January 1st of 1841 and was called off at Lincoln's request. But as true love does, the pair did reconcile and were married on November 4th of 1842. Lincoln was both an affectionate husband and father to his 4 children. His eldest son, Robert Todd Lincoln, born in 1843, would be the only child to live to maturity. Edward Eddie Baker Lincoln was born in 1846 and was just 4 years old when he passed from what is assumed to be tuberculosis. After Eddie was William Willie Wallace Lincoln, who was born on December 21st of 1850 and was named after Mary's brother-in-law, Dr. William Wallace. And lastly was Thomas Tad Lincoln, who was born in 1853. Willie and Tad were known hellions during their youth in Springfield, but both Tad and Willie would become ill early in 1862 while residing at the White House with what is widely believed to have been typhoid. Tad was only lightly affected, but Willie would continue to fall deeper and deeper into his illness until he eventually succumbed on February 20th with both of his parents at his bedside. The death of their son had a remarkable effect on both Abe and Mary. It is noted that Abe was said to have suffered from melancholy over his death, which, by today's standards, would have been diagnosed as clinical depression. Upon the death of his son, he was quoted to have said, "My poor boy, he was too good for this earth. God has called him home. I know that he is much better off in heaven, but then we loved him so much. It is hard to have him die." After Willie's passing, Abe locked himself in a room alone and just wept. Mary remained in bed. Mary was deep in the midst of her grief and felt the need to believe in something more for her children. She desperately wanted to believe that death was not the end. She became intent with purpose. She would speak with her children again. And in this, she developed a deep belief in the afterlife. She sought comfort in seances held within the walls of the White House, and there's evidence to suggest that Mary hosted as many as 8 seances during her time as First Lady, several of which Abe himself was said to be in attendance for. Mary truly believed in and found solace in these seances, often commenting to her half-sister, "Willie lives. He comes to me every night and stands at the foot of my bed with the same sweet, adorable smile that he always has had. He does not come alone. Little Eddie is sometimes with him." It was a rough life for Mary, filled with loss and pain, from losing her mother at the tender age of 3 to surviving 3 of her 4 children, as even though Tad would recover from the fever that stole Willie from her, and though he would outlive his father, Tad died of heart failure at the young age of 18 on July 16th of 1871. And then, of course, there was the fact that she was present to her own husband's assassination. On April 15th, 1865, while attending the comedy stage play Our American Cousin by Laura Keene at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C., the life of Abraham Lincoln would be cut short. At 10:15, well-known actor John Wilkes Booth, a known supporter of slavery, fearing the overthrow of the Constitution in his beloved South, would climb the stairs, slip into the Lincoln box of the theater, take fire, and infamously assassinate the president. A bedside vigil of the president consisted of Vice President Andrew Johnson, members of Lincoln's cabinet, and several of his closest friends. However, poor Mary, overcome with shock and grief, lay in bed in an adjoining room with her son Tad. Lincoln was officially pronounced dead at 7:22 a.m. on the morning of April 15th, 1865. He was just 56 years old. The president's temporary coffin was draped in an American flag and was escorted by armed cavalry to the White House, where surgeons would conduct a thorough autopsy and prepare him for burial. And poor Mary, in her grief, had but one request. Mary wrote a note to the surgeons and asked them to please clip a lock of his hair for her. The amount of loss Mary Todd Lincoln experienced during her time on this earth is something no human should ever have to endure. She was bereft. She was distraught. No amount of seances could return her children to her. Nothing would bring her husband back. Mary never fully recovered from all the sadness she experienced in life. The grief was so strong that her son Robert actually had her committed to an asylum for some time in the later years of her life. Mary finally joined her husband and children in death at age 63 on July 16th of 1882. Cause of death: stroke. She was interred in the Lincoln tomb in the Oak Ridge Cemetery, where she rests this day, finally, beside her husband and children for the time they were not granted in life, now joined together in the afterlife. Clearly, the Lincoln family had their share of sadness and setbacks in their lives, and it is widely believed that because Mr. Lincoln was assassinated while in service to this country as the president, that this is the reason why he seems to not be able to move on from the grounds of the White House. There have been several reports from numerous individuals over the years claiming to have felt and seen the presence of old Honest Abe. Through the years, there have been many claims from residents and White House staff members that they have felt the presence of Lincoln through the halls and bedrooms. Eleanor Roosevelt, though never claiming to have seen the former president, stated that she felt quite confidently that her dog Fala did, as the dog is known to regularly bark for no reason, directed at the Lincoln bedroom. Many others have also been reported to have felt the presence of Lincoln over the years, including James Haggerty, the press secretary to Dwight Eisenhower, and the press secretary to Lady Bird Johnson, Liz Carpenter. And it isn't just a feeling that Lincoln is present. The former president's footsteps are reportedly frequently heard walking the halls outside of the Lincoln bedroom. Margaret Truman, daughter of former President Harry Truman, even reported to have heard a slight rapping on the door of the Lincoln bedroom, believing it to be the room's namesake. President Truman himself also reported to have heard a knocking on the door while spending the night in the Lincoln bedroom. However, it was First Lady Grace Coolidge who would be the first to claim that she actually saw the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. The report goes that she walked into the Yellow Oval Room and saw Lincoln standing at the window, just taking in a view of the Potomac. Many others have claimed to have seen the spirit of Lincoln over the years, from Theodore Roosevelt to Maureen Reagan and her husband, and a number of staff members of the Franklin Roosevelt administration. On one particular occasion, Roosevelt's personal valet is reported to have run screaming from the White House, claiming to have seen the spectral Lincoln. In 1942, we have one of the more famous incidents involving the departed Abraham Lincoln. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands was reported to have been visiting the White House, and in the middle of the night, alleged to have heard footsteps outside of her bedroom at the White House. She answered the knock upon her door, and upon doing so was shocked to see Lincoln in a frock coat and top hat standing in front of her, to which she promptly fainted. But my personal favorite Lincoln story, maybe because I sort of have a sick sense of humor, goes a little something like this. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill loved to retire late, take a long, hot bath, while drinking a scotch, smoke a cigar, and relax. But on this particular occasion, he climbed out of the bath and, naked but for his cigar, upon walking into the bedroom, was surprised to see Lincoln standing by the fireplace in the room, leaning on the mantel. Churchill, who was known to be quick on the uptake and quite the smart aleck, simply took his cigar out of his mouth, tapped the ash off the end of his cigar, and said, "Good evening, Mr. President. You seem to have me at a disadvantage." Lincoln smiled softly, as if laughing, and disappeared. And Churchill was left to smile, naked in embarrassment. The tales of Lincoln also continue in the modern era, as President Reagan shared his experiences with the supernatural at the 1986 state dinner honoring the Canadian Prime Minister at the time, Brian Mulroney. The tale goes that Reagan's dog Rex, quote, barked frantically at the entrance of the Lincoln bedroom, refusing to even cross its threshold. At first, Reagan brushed it off as just silly dog behavior, but admitted that he had to start taking it more seriously when his daughter and son-in-law reported to him that they had seen the apparition of the departed president on more than one occasion. In a 2018 interview on the Today Show, first daughter Jenna Bush Hager confessed that, along with twin sister Barbara, she had encountered something supernatural at the White House while in residence as a teenager. Jenna recalled that both she and Barbara were awoken one night to the sound of a phone ringing. Upon being roused from their sleep, both girls reportedly heard the faint tune of a 1920s piano coming out of the fireplace in their bedroom, as clear as day. And while there are no specific reports of ghostly activity under the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton reportedly stated on a morning talk show that he felt the White House was, quote, a little creepy, especially at night. Finally, First Lady Michelle Obama confessed that both she and her husband/President Barack Obama experienced several strange occurrences during the night of the course of the 8 years of the Obama administration. Mrs. Obama claimed to hear several strange sounds in the hallways of the residence that would wake her from her sleep. And these noises were loud enough and disturbed her enough to compel her to ask her husband to investigate the sounds with her. To this day, it seems, President Lincoln wants his presence known, and that he wants to be remembered. His presence in no way feels malicious to those who encounter him. Sure, they may be a little startled or taken aback, or even feel creeped out when they feel a presence in a room, especially if they believe themselves to be alone in that room. However, the significance of the sensations are what lingers and what I think matters the most here. History is always what seems to provide the largest infusion into the mythos and tales of supposed ghosts or hauntings. Most reports of hauntings occur in places where some significant tragedy or tale with cultural or historical implications has taken place. It is important that we remember those who have come before us, for that is how they live on in our tales and stories, in textbooks and biographies, and maybe, just maybe, in some spectral visit deep into the late hours of the evening, as a knock on the door, footsteps down a hallway, or just a sensation of company that you didn't know you had. Our feelings and emotions provide such intense residual effects that they can be felt years, decades, generations after we have left the earth. To be remembered in the hearts and minds of those we leave behind, that's how we live forever. I hope you guys enjoyed this little peek into the White House and its many inhabitants, both alive and dead. A lot of research went into this one, and I will be acknowledging my sources in the description below, so please give that a read. But I have to give a huge shout out to the Smithsonian YouTube channel for their recreation of the assassination. That channel has a lot of amazing history to dive into, so please consider going and subscribing to their channel. And my subscriber family shout out on this one goes out to one of my favorite storytellers / artists, the fabulous Miss Addie. She does have a YouTube channel where she posts adorable animations and art, and I will post a link to her channel below as well. And if you want a shout out in a video, subscribe to be a part of the PressStart family, and please be sure you guys give this video a thumbs up so I know you made it all the way through. Post your comments on what haunted location I should tackle next, and as always, thank you for your love and support, and I'll see you in the next one.